Hey there! Ready for another deep dive? Today we're diving headfirst into the world of language learning, and let me tell you, we're tackling a big one. Fluency versus accuracy.
The age-old debate.
Right. It's a question every language learner grapples with at some point.
It's true.
So picture this. You're finally booking that trip abroad. Maybe you've been dreaming of this for years, or maybe you're just tired of that language learning app gathering dust on your phone.
It happens to the best of us.
And you're ready to finally unlock your inner polyglot.
That's where we come in.
Exactly. We're here to equip you with the tools and strategies to make real progress.
And bust some myths along the way.
Okay, I like where this is going. So before we get too far, let's define the battlefield, shall we? When we say fluency versus accuracy, what are we actually talking about?
Well, if you think about it, there are so many different ways to be good at a language.
That's true. Our source actually defines fluency in a really relatable way. Think of that friend we all have, you know the one, who can strike up a conversation with anyone in any language.
Oh, I know exactly the type.
Their grammar might not be perfectly polished, but they just have this knack for getting their point across, you know? They've got that certain something.
It's like they just radiate this confidence that lets them power through any awkwardness or mistakes.
Yes. It's like, Who cares if you don't know the subjunctive mood when you can order a whole meal in fluent Spanish, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But then on the flip side, we have accuracy. This is where grammar reigns supreme.
It's all about precision, getting those verb tenses down pat.
Yeah, those are the folks who wouldn't dream of misusing a who versus a whom.
Which, hey, there's a place for that too.
Absolutely. But our source points out that both fluency and accuracy, while great in their own right, they can also bring up anxieties for language learners. Like, have you ever felt that fear of sounding silly or hitting a wall in a conversation and just freezing up?
Oh, for sure. It's so common.
And a lot of that stems from this whole debate of fluency versus accuracy. So let's dig into the arguments, shall we? Let's start with team fluency. What are the big selling points here?
Well, team fluency is all about real-world communication. Their argument is that in many situations, getting your message across trumps perfect grammar. Like if you're asking for directions or trying to, explain a medical issue, fluency is key.
Right, because in those moments, it's less about impressing people with your perfect grammar and more about just communicating effectively to get what you need.
Exactly. It's about connecting with people. And there's actually research that suggests prioritizing fluency early on would actually help you with accuracy in the long run.
Yeah, that's interesting. How so?
Well, the theory is that by allowing yourself to be fluent, to make mistakes, without constantly stopping to self-correct, you're actually training your brain to think in the new language. You're building those essential neural pathways.
So it's like you're laying the groundwork.
Exactly. You're building that fluency foundation, and then it becomes easier to layer in the finer points of grammar and vocabulary later on. And once you've got that solid base, you can go back and fine-tune, polish those grammar skills.
So it's like building a house. You lay the foundation first, and then you go in with the fancy finishes later.
Precisely. But, of course, there's another side to this story.
Right. What about the accuracy advocates out there?
Team accuracy would argue that having a strong grammar foundation is essential from the get-go.
And their point is?
They'd say it's all about building credibility, especially in professional contexts. Think about it. A misplaced comma in a legal document or a business contract, it can have huge implications.
You're not kidding. There are definitely times when precision is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Accuracy matters, especially when the stakes are high.
Okay, so we've heard compelling arguments from both team fluency and team accuracy, but here's the thing. What happens when we take these ideas to the extreme?
Ah, yes, the dangers of extreme.
Exactly. Our source actually cautions against focusing solely on fluency without ever circling back to address those pesky grammar gremlins.
It's true. If you're constantly prioritizing fluency, always speaking off the cuff, without ever taking the time to review and refine, you do run the risk of ingraining bad habits.
And those can be tough to break. It's like that saying, practice makes permanent, not perfect.
Exactly. And it can have real consequences. Imagine, for example, your career stalling because your writing skills haven't kept pace with your spoken fluency.
Oof, that's a tough pill to swallow. But on the flip side, what about the pitfalls of being too obsessed with accuracy?
Yes, the perfectionism trap. This is a big one for language learners. So many people get stuck in this cycle of overthinking and self-editing, so afraid to make a mistake that they end up sounding, well, a bit robotic.
Or they just clam up entirely.
Exactly.
If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to like the video. Share it with friends who might find it helpful. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next video. Let us know in the comments what topic you'd like to hear.
It's like they're so busy trying to construct the perfect sentence in their head that they never actually get around to speaking.
I've been there. That moment when you're trying to impress someone with your language skills, but you overthink it so much that you completely blank.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
Remember, language is about connection, and sometimes that means being willing to let go of perfection and just go with the flow.
So if going all in on either extreme isn't ideal, how do we strike that balance? How do we get that fluency in practice, accuracy in review, as our source so aptly puts it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something we'll definitely be diving deeper into. It's about shifting your focus depending on the situation. When you're practicing speaking, whether it's with a language partner or even just talking to yourself, give yourself permission to be fluent.
So no more grammar police in your head.
Exactly. Silence those inner critics. The goal is to get comfortable expressing yourself naturally, to get those words flowing without overthinking every syllable.
It's like a judgment-free zone for language.
Precisely. Now here's the key. Afterward, take some time to review.
So there's where the accuracy in review comes in.
Right. You've had your fun, you've been fluent, now it's time to analyze. Listen back to a recording of yourself speaking. Or if you've been writing, look over that.
And search for those little errors.
Exactly. But here's the important part. Don't get discouraged by those errors.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that. It's easy to spiral into that negative self-talk.
I know, it's so tempting. But instead of seeing errors as failures, see them as opportunities. It's all part of the learning process.
Okay, that's a good way to reframe it.
Right. It's like reviewing game footage after a match. You see what worked, what needs improvement, and you come back stronger next time.
I love that analogy. So how do we make that review process really count?
It's all about focusing on one or two key areas at a time.
So don't try to fix everything at once.
Exactly. For example, maybe you notice that you constantly mix up the gender of nouns in your target language. Or maybe you always trip up on a particular verb tense.
Been there.
Instead of spreading yourself thin trying to correct every little thing, dedicate a practice session or two to mastering that one grammar point.
Okay, so break it down into manageable chunks.
Precisely. You can find exercises online, in textbooks, there are even apps for that. Or you can be creative and come up with your own.
I like that. So we've talked about the review part, the accuracy part, but what about that initial fluency in practice? Any tips for boosting that?
Absolutely. One technique that I'm a huge fan of is called shadowing.
Oh, yeah. Shadowing, isn't that where you basically become a language learning ninja?
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Basically, you find some audio or video in your target language, something you enjoy, and you try to speak along with it in real time.
It's like you're there shattered, mimicking their every word.
You got it. It's like mimicking your favorite musician, but with language. You're training your ears to pick up on the nuances of pronunciation, the rhythm, the intonation, and your mouth to replicate those sounds naturally.
It's amazing how much it helps with internalizing those subtle aspects of the language that you might not even consciously notice otherwise.
Exactly. It's like you're absorbing the music of the language.
Bet it's fun.
Exactly. And that's a crucial point that our source highlights make it enjoyable. Think about what you already love to do. If you love music, listen to more music in your target language. If you're a movie buff, watch movies with subtitles, play video games, find podcasts that pique your interest. The possibilities are endless.
It's all about integrating it into your life.
Precisely. Make language a part of your life, not just another chore on your to-do list.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of fluency versus accuracy, what's the big takeaway? What do we want our listeners to remember?
The most important thing to remember is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. The best balance for you, that sweet spot between fluency and accuracy, it's going to depend on your individual goals, your learning style, even your personality.
It's like finding your own language learning recipe. You might start with a basic framework, but then you add your own spices and flavors to make it your own.
I love that analogy. And that's what makes this whole journey so exciting. It's about self-discovery. Pay attention to how you naturally learn, what motivates you, what makes you feel confident. Embrace those strengths. And don't be afraid to experiment a little.
Challenge yourself, step outside that comfort zone, and remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And above all, have fun. Learning a language should be a joyful experience.
Couldn't agree more. So tell us, what's one small step you can take today to infuse more fluency and accuracy into your language learning journey? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.